Hello, I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected, where we talk about what really matters to enterprise buyers navigating today's technology and sourcing decisions. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Frank Zagrodnik from TC2 and Deb Bowling from LB3, and we're going to discuss the various impacts of supplier asset divestitures, some specifics on Lumen's recent EMEA divestiture, and considerations of these impacts on your organization. Now, the expansion and retraction of individual providers' networks that we see with Lumen's sale of its EMEA assets to Colt is reminiscent of the late 90s and early 2000s when top providers expanded their networks in their home country to a region or the world, then retracting after the 2000 dot-com bust. Global Crossing, WorldCom, and Quest sound familiar? Frank, Deb, thanks for joining me today. And to start, for our listeners who might not be familiar with the Lumen divestiture, let's start with some background there.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. It's great to be back on Staying Connected. So we must rewind a bit. In November of 2023, Lumen Technologies completed the divestiture of its European, Middle Eastern, and African business to Colt for $1.8 billion in cash. This transaction included Lumen's entire EMEA terrestrial and subsea network infrastructure, data centers, and network equipment. Fast forwarding to January 2026, the two companies operate as strategic partners, allowing Lumen to focus on its North American core while utilizing Colt's expanded footprint to serve international clients. One of the questions is, why are we talking about this now? So based on this divestiture, we still see some of our clients that have not made network or supplier decisions in EMEA and continue to be billed by Lumen. There are many reasons for this. One, smaller component of their network and it hasn't been prioritized. Two, customers may be waiting for other supplier contracts to expire and then focus on a global procurement or RFP and ultimately consolidate. Or three, simply treating it as business as usual and kicking the can. Whatever the reason, inaction or waiting probably isn't the best option.
Deb, you've worked global and multinational ICT deals for decades, including ones with strategic partners like AT&T World Partners, and then there was Concert Communications, which was a marriage of BT and MCI. These had trouble gaining traction and fell apart in less than a decade. Do you think this new Lumen Colt partnership will last?
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me back. Whether and how long it will last is unknown. There are no public details about the Lumen service provider contract, where Lumen provides U.S. services to Colt, or about the buyer, aka Colt service provider contract, under which Colt provides non-U.S. services to Lumen. These underlie the partnership. We don't know their duration or their terms, whether there are minimums that each party must meet, or whether leaving their obligations behind are better than sticking with those contracts. Remember, in each of these agreements, one is a provider and the other a customer. It's no surprise that similar challenges arise in enterprise ICT purchase contracts. Other variables include multinational ICT purchasers' experience with the Lumen Colt partnership and how they seek to structure their purchases. In the 30 plus years I've worked on ICT contracts, multinational clients have moved from country specific to region specific, EMEA, Americas, APAC, to global contracts, and some have reverted back to regional or country specific contracts.
Thanks, Deb. Frank, with so much still TBD, are Lumen and Colt reaping the benefits?
So when you look at the why behind the divestiture, you need to consider some of the benefits, both from a supplier perspective as well as your own enterprise considerations. First, from a supplier perspective, for Lumen, the 1.8 billion sale provided significant capital to reduce debt and focus on high growth areas like its North American fiber business. This shift follows a similar 2022 divestiture of its Latin America business. This could prove to be beneficial as investments are more concentrated and ultimately focus on core offerings. For Colt, they gained ownership of approximately 1.6 million kilometers of fiber and 12 cable landing stations. Ownership of these assets, rather than leasing from a third party, provides Colt with greater control over pricing and service level agreements.
So, possibly a win win for each supplier. What do you think this means for our clients?
For enterprise customers, the transition has been designed to prioritize service stability through a long-term partnership agreement. Former Lumen EMEA customers now have access to Colt's broader digital infrastructure, which spans 32 countries and includes high-density metropolitan networks in 230 cities. Multinational corporations that require services both North America and EMEA can still engage with either provider. Lumen serves as Colt's partner of choice for North America connectivity, while Colt acts as its primary infrastructure provider for Lumen's North American customers with needs in EMEA. Lumen customers gain access to Colt's advanced on-demand and SD-WAN technologies, as well as integrated SASE and managed hosting services. But keep in mind, there are many other supplier alternatives in EMEA that an enterprise should consider.
Deb, what are some of the impacts you see with the partnership?
Frank mentioned Lumen and Colt being each other's partner of choice. Upon closing of their deal, Lumen's president and CEO, Kate Johnson, said, "Building deep relationships with strategic partners allows us to simplify our business while delivering a seamless networking experience for our multinational customers." This experience, however, may not be seamless. 18 months post closing, Lumen's strategic partner, Colt, divested 6 of the acquired data centers in Germany, UK, and the Netherlands to North Sea, and 2 to a private UK entity. Moreover, negotiating with Lumen or Colt for US and EMEA services may start with the lowest common denominator contract terms. Let me give you an example. If the contract under which Lumen buys services from Colt limits Colt's damages for confidentiality breaches or has poor SLAs, Lumen will set the same or lower limits and SLAs in its customer contracts. Lumen's willingness to do more would require it to get concessions from Colt or to accept a risk over which it has limited control. It controls the US network, but no longer controls the EMEA one. Expect frustration and delays in your negotiations, particularly with Lumen, who pushes risks, even those that it can control, to its customers.
Frank, what's your take on the potential impacts of the divestiture?
Certainly, a divestiture can bring both opportunities and challenges. When you consider the challenges, this may result in moving to another supplier in EMEA. This means more contracting, different portals, additional account teams, more invoices, just to name a few of the items to consider. If you keep your network with Colt in EMEA, there may be integration complexities and service friction that the combined assets introduce. Combining two distinct optical network technologies and the associated back-end automated systems is rarely seamless. Customers may experience deployment friction, such as longer onboarding processes for new services, as the combined entity reconciles these different platforms. Divestitures often lead to a change in service culture. While most of Lumen's 1,300 regional employees transition to Colt, customers may still face visibility gaps in end-to-end management or slower support response times during their transition phase. Lastly, one of the most significant for our clients, large enterprises that intentionally use both Lumen and Colt for carrier diversity, may now find themselves with overlapping footprints and a single point of failure. This overlap can complicate risk management for enterprises who require both site and carrier diversity.
That last point's a really good one, Frank. Deb, what should enterprise customers do in this particular or other similar situations?
In your contracts, you should seek protections against the negative impacts of divestitures by your ICT providers. 4 core ones are First, a post-divestiture right to conduct due diligence on the acquiring company. For regulated companies, this typically focuses on information security reviews, including completing information security questionnaires at no cost to you. Second, the right to terminate the contract or services if the acquiring company does not meet your security requirements, the acquiring company is a competitor of yours, or the diversity of your network services would be lost. For the diversity right to work, your orders must include KMZ routing maps and obligations for the vendor to maintain the route that they've disclosed. Third, a strong, detailed account team for support, with appropriate limits on changes to the account team and requirements for knowledge transfers. It's good to have a hot backup account team member ready to jump in, particularly if any of those transitioning Lumen folks decide to jump ship. And finally, an automatic reduction in minimum spend requirements if you terminate the services.
Thanks, Deb. Frank, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, definitely a space to watch closely in the coming months, particularly if you've gotten significant network footprint in EMEA with Colt or Lumen. As I mentioned earlier, there are many other supplier alternatives in EMEA that an enterprise can consider. And we always recommend vetting alternatives through an RFP or some other kind of leverage sourcing event to drive the best outcomes.
Deb, Frank, thanks so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on our Staying Connected program. And to our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about how to manage supplier divestitures and take next steps, or if you'd like to discuss other technology, strategy, sourcing, and cost reduction needs with Frank, Deb, or me, or any of our TC2 and LB3 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay up to date on all manner of ICT topics by subscribing to Staying Connected, checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.